Welcome to another edition of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, and I'm here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Well, it's an opportune time once again to check in with Thomas Caldwell. He's the founder of Caldwell Securities in Toronto. With the federal election now called for September 20th, there's a lot to talk about. Welcome back, Tom.
Thank you, Tony.
First, I guess maybe for our audience, a little bit of context. What's your take on the economy right at the start of this federal election?
Well, we're sort of pedaling along, if you will. There's not anything dramatic happening upside or downside. I think the economy has been left on automatic pilot for far too long. We're surviving, and you know there's still jobs, there's still things happening in the economy, but we're not putting the building blocks and policies in place to build for the future, for our children and grandchildren to have jobs and what this country's going to be. Our policies seem to be focused on the immediate, what's going to get a vote here, what's going to get elected, as opposed to a strategic view of where we want. But the economy itself is okay for now. Interest rates are low, people can do things, a little bit of trouble getting people coming back to work. Inflation seems to be easing off a bit. So it's not bad, but it's this neutral plateauing that I sense in the economy.
Now, I guess, therefore, you're not concerned about the July inflation numbers. I think it was at 3.7%. So you see that as...
Not at all.
Yeah.
The thing is, we're coming off a base where everything has gone haywire, and statistics are always backward looking. And in Canada, they're deeply flawed as well. So it doesn't concern me too much in that, you know, we went from nothing to something, people catching up. There's a lot's going on, but the statistics are just not to be trusted too soon after a major event like that.
Fair enough.
It's got to level out and get to whatever normal looks like.
Yeah, I know that's fair enough, because there's been such a shock to the system that you can't just take 1 month's statistics and extrapolate from that. So inflation, interest rates, those aren't the future risks you're looking at. You're looking at future risks that are connected to, do we have a plan for this economy? Is that right?
Yes. I just don't think, I think we've been floating around doing Band-Aid things on what are, very good social policies of some variety or other, but no real thinking of how do we build Canada? How do we have a vision to get people enthusiastic or more enthusiastic? Young people, for example, it's kind of interesting. Young people now are very entrepreneurial, more so than even when I came into the business. People want to start businesses. Young gals and young men are trying new things, whether it be technology or new industries. One of our dear friends, her daughters started a soft drink company in London, Ontario. So, I mean, people are going out and striving and trying to do things. That's what we should be thinking about in policy, but I don't think we are, sadly.
Now, you took out an ad, or Caldwell Securities did, I believe in the Globe and Mail and the National Post at the very least, saying that you're bullish about Canada. Why'd you do that?
Well, we have a period of what I believe is significant negativity about Canada. We have to remind ourselves that this is an incredible country. It's a country that people strive all over the world to get here. We have a place down in Niagara Lake, and I look at people having picnics from, Southeast Asia, all of these countries, and I feel so good that they're here and safe, enjoying this country. And we've had a lot of put downs in the country. Everybody's saying, it's been terrible. We have a wonderful history. Make no mistake about it. Canada has sacrificed way beyond its terms in fighting evil in World Wars I and II. We've always participated in peacekeeping. We've done so much in the world, and our policies, our healthcare may be not the best in the world, but it's good and it's free. And so this is a great country. When our prime minister comes out with that idiocy of saying, well, let's not celebrate the 1st of July. It's a time of reflection. Get over it. That's politicians covering themselves with ashes and sackcloth trying to get votes. And it's about time we celebrated Canada. I'm not celebrating the politicians or the governments or anyone else, but the people and the country that we have, the things we've done and the things we can do in the future. And that's what I'm really speaking about. Not necessarily even markets or anything else, but we've got to remember this.
Right.
And come to a negative period, which has been reinforced by basically some of our politicians.
And welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with our monthly show with Thomas Caldwell. He is the founder of Caldwell Securities. Tom, Mr. Trudeau says in his justification for calling the election that we need to decide how to tackle the future, that now's the time to make some choices. At least that was one of his justifications. So I want you to react to that, because you did mention in the first segment that it is a time where we have to think ahead if we're going to move ahead as a country. So as Mr. Trudeau got it right in that sense?
Well, I think it's very important. We do have to think ahead. I don't know that he's the fellow that can and is willing to do it. Remember, he's run a minority government now for a couple of years, but in that minority government, he's got absolutely everything he wanted. There wasn't anything that got sort of turned down. The NDP has been very supportive of him. So why bother having an election other than trying to consolidate his position? But I haven't seen much in the way of vision coming out of Ottawa for quite a period of time. So to say, okay, now you just stick with us this time, and we're going to have a vision because we have to build for the future. Well, he's had a lot of time to be thinking in those terms. He's had 2 terms as prime minister, and I haven't seen anything in that regard. We don't have leaders, we have followers. What they're doing is they follow the polls. What is going to make us look good? And that means you cater to special interests, vocal interests, feel-good policies. I love this thing. We're talking about childcare. This is really important, but we've talked about childcare every election that I can ever remember since I was a kid. So, okay, if we need to do something, let's just go and do it and then get on with other stuff. But somehow, if you just elect us this time, we're serious. We're going to deal with it this time. But what about all the other elections? It's just a joke. Was it Abraham Lincoln? You can fool some of the people all of the time, but it's bringing. I don't see the real rationale for it other than trying to consolidate power for whatever reasons. But I don't believe in the reasons of we need to have a big strategic view and build our country. He keeps talking about a reset. Frankly, I'm quite concerned of anything he considers in terms of a reset.
Right.
And listen, I'm not picking on him. I'm a liberal at heart. A small L and a small conservative at heart as well. But let's go do something instead of chatting about it or doing in Band-Aid stuff just to get votes.
Yeah, and political parties, they're usually judged on what they want to do in the future. But if you're a sitting government, you're also judged on your track record, what you've done in the past, in this case, the past 6 years. So when you look at it from the fiscal point of view, budgets, reaction, the economic reaction to COVID, what do you see as the standouts, both positive and negative, on the federal government, the Liberal government's record?
Well, frankly, first off, with COVID, we were way behind the curve initially because we did not have enough vaccines to deal with everybody. So the scheduling thing, that was a mess up in the part of government. The spending of money and throwing money around has been far beyond what has been required. I was interested. I got home the other night and I see I got a letter there. The federal government's going to send me $500 and my wife $500 because we're over 65 years of age. My wife will be mad at me for even saying that. But that's nice, but I don't need it. And most people over 65, we're not in too bad shape. We're the generation that very often own our homes and everything else. So it is kind of taking from younger people to give it to us old guys. I don't know that that's anything other than a vote buying exercise.
Yeah, it used to be that you'd get a bottle of liquor, and that's how you'd buy the vote. So the cost has gone up over the years, I suppose.
Yeah, indeed. But I don't see it as anything other than vote buying. But Tony, I learned something in the last little while, and that is that political parties don't really develop their own platforms for running elections. They go to outside consultants who see what's going to give us the votes. What will win this election? Okay, let's do that.
Right.
So what you're really doing is developing policies just to get reelected versus the long-term good of the country. And that's a new revelation for me, even in my advanced years.
Now, we just have under a minute left. Maybe this will go over to the next segment. But the Conservative Party of Canada, to my knowledge, it's the only one that's done this so far, has released a 160-page platform. I'm not putting your feet to the fire to say that you've read every single bit of it, but maybe there's a couple of things that have caught your attention. Anything that you want to talk about?
One thing and one thing only. If it's 160 pages, you're lying to me. That's all I need to know. Why doesn't the government or the Conservative Party have 5 or 6 or 7 target policies that they think is important, and just give us that we can look at? This is what they stand for. This is what they believe, and this is what they're going to do. The rest, the fill-in is all there. But if you're giving me 160 pages of feel-good nonsense, I don't read fiction. I only read nonfiction.
Okay, on that note, we're going to take a brief break. And we're back here at Boom and Bust talking with Thomas Caldwell. He's the founder of Caldwell Securities. This is our monthly check-in. Tom, you were just eviscerating the Conservative platform before the break. Let me just play devil's advocate for a minute. The Conservatives do have a 5-point plan, and they also have this large 160-page platform, everything from soup to nuts, foreign policy, Indigenous solutions, the environmental policy, and so on. Now, one of the ones that I know Aaron O'Toole has put in the shop window this week at least, has been the idea that we would have a GST holiday in the month of December that would help store owners and restaurant owners and so on. A little bit of a bell and whistle perhaps, but it obviously captures the attention. What do you think about that idea?
I think you captured a little bit of a bell and whistle. That's not policy. That's gimmickry. Mm-hmm. We need bigger policies. I mean, we're going to have, I think one of the big concerns people have are what's going to happen to our taxes, what's going to happen to capital gains tax, what's going to happen to capital gains on your house, what's going to happen to a wealth tax, because governments define everybody as wealthy, it seems, unless you're on welfare. I think you're considered wealthy if you're earning over $50,000 a year. If you're doing that in Toronto, you're starving to death. So as far as I'm concerned, those are the real issues at hand. These short-term by-vote gimmicks do not impress me. And I think clarity and courage and vision are the kind of things that I think Canadians and young Canadians, they're so apathetic now. And frankly, our leaders and frankly, Mr. O'Toole is spreading apathy wherever he goes. I mean, people aren't buying into it. Give us something to get our teeth in to say, yeah, we can do this. Mm-hmm. Challenge Canadian people, and particularly young people, want to go and do something different and better, as opposed to the same old hackneyed policies. Yeah, I know we got environmental things, we got Indigenous something. That's going to be with us forever, but we got to go beyond these things and build something so that we can deal with issues of this matter. But unless you have a strong economy, you're not going to be able to pay for this stuff. So I think that's really what I'd like to see, some clarity, direction, enthusiasm.
Now, Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader, he's been very clear. He wants to have an additional wealth tax. And I believe he is also in favor of restructuring the capital gains taxes. So that's clear. It's clarity, but may not be in the right direction. What do you think?
Well, I think it's in the wrong direction, but obviously you can expect me to say that. He's going to say that to win votes as well. He can, when you're realistically not going to get elected, you can say anything you want, unless you happen to be Bob Rae and wake up one morning and say, oh my heavens, I've been elected. Now what am I going to do?
Now what? Yeah, exactly.
It's far easier to be a revolutionary. I used to keep joking, the best way to undermine a revolutionary is to give them power. Then they have to deal with reality. But there is a reality here that we want to go forward and build. Canada right now is in the post-development era. We are not growing. We are regulating, taxing, things that exist, but we're not really growing in terms of structural, fundamental growth, manufacturing, technology, et cetera, in Canada. And our governments, our policies are counter to that. And they don't even realize it. Evil never knows it's evil. Nobody thinks they're evil, but sometimes people do very dopey things when they are not really self-analyzing or taking their own personal inventories. And I don't think that's a strong trait in Ottawa or in Queen's Park for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. Canada-U.S. relations, do you think they're going to be a factor in this election?
We don't have relations. I don't think Biden really knows where we are, but I saw it was in one of the papers today that he's no friend to Canada, and he's not. The best friend Canada ever had in the White House was George Bush Jr. And his favorite line was just give Canada what they want. They're a minimum aggravation neighbor. They're pretty decent people. Just give them what they want. Stop fighting with them. And now he wasn't one of my favorite presidents either, but he was certainly the best friend we had down there, just with that basic attitude. But make no mistake, whether it be President Trump or Biden, they don't consider us at all. And they have this view of there's us and them, and we're a them. So we can expect nothing favorable from them. The one thing Trudeau Sr. tried to do, that was the one that had a brain, he tried to diversify our trade relationships away from the United States. He was not successful in that, but that was still a policy that was correct and frankly should have continued.
Well, we're going to continue this conversation. I can assure you of that. We've got another segment after the break. So you speak with Thomas Caldwell. He is the founder of Caldwell Securities in Toronto. Please stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, with our monthly discussion with Thomas Caldwell. He is the founder of Caldwell Securities in Toronto. Tom, one of the things we were talking about President Biden a little bit before the break, one of the things that he said in the last few days, at least, was that he wanted OPEC to increase their oil production and distribution. Here's a guy who was talking about renewables and talking about meeting the climate change priorities from the Paris meeting of the UN and so on. And now all of a sudden, because prices are rising precipitously for oil and gasoline in the United States, he wants OPEC to turn up the spigots a little bit. Is this a turning point, do you think, for oil and gas, or is this just another talking point?
Well, it really is quite amazing that he doesn't want Canadian oil, but he does want OPEC, and by the way, Russian oil as well. It's the irony is overwhelming. As you know, from an investment point of view, and that's what I do, I tend to be a value investor. And with all this talk about energy and whatever else, banks are not going to fund any more exploration. I basically bought a bunch of the oil stocks and energy stocks in Canada, because what you're going to do is you're going to cut supply in the future. And, you don't have to be a brilliant kid when, supply demand curves. You cut supply and the demand stays the same or even increases a bit. Energy prices are going up. And you didn't have to be a Mensa member to spot that. So that was an investment opportunity. I'm still heavily invested in the oil and gas sector for that reason. His first act, of course, was canceling the Keystone XL pipeline, which was just pure political nonsense. But clearly the man has issues. So now they're saying, oh, wait a minute. All these people have gone this. There's going to be a gap between energy now and get to electrification of everything. And it isn't going to be as soon as people think. So this gap will create price increases. So President Biden realizes the price of gasoline is close to doubled in the last 6 months in the United States. And I imagine someone has pointed it out to him at this point in time. Oh, well, okay, let's do another Band-Aid solution. We'll tell OPEC to increase oil production. And let me put it this way. America is losing its clout in the world for obvious reasons, and particularly the most recent ones. Not many people really listen to or are frightened by the United States anymore in terms of this, what they request of people. They're not trusted anymore. So, and haven't been for a long time. So I just think it's bizarre that you cut off Canadian oil, and we've had a North American energy policy, which they constantly abrogate and say, oh, by the way, let's get some oil from over there. Stupid.
Yeah, and obviously from countries that have worse human rights records and aren't necessarily friends in the United States and other areas. So, do you? I know Premier Jason Kenney was on this point too that you just said about how it's a bit nonsensical that he's calling for OPEC to increase its production, but you've we've got this friendly neighbor. Do you sense that Canada can start to be more competitive in the future and have a bit more weight on these kinds of discussions?
Well, can and will we do it are two quite different things. One of the interesting things I think I've mentioned to you in this show before was liquefied natural gas, a tremendous, huge business, clean energy. And we've been fighting for almost 20 years to build an LNG facility in the West Coast. And every special interest, whether it be native, provincial, everything, oh no, can't do that, can't do that. And if you're concerned about the environment, that was a great thing to do because LNG going to China is replacing coal. And by the way, they're the big polluters in the world.
Right.
We haven't been able to do it. So there's so much we can do and should do, but we are governed by special interests, provincial barriers. So you can't move your oil here. You can't go through Quebec. I mean, Quebec has oil tankers coming from Venezuela daily, yet you can't ship Canadian oil. I mean, so what is wrong with this picture? Nobody even bothers to mention this, but we can be a major energy player and a good environmental player.
Right.
It's the will to do it, the courage to do it, and stop listening to the micro special interest groups just because they have a couple of votes.
Hold that thought for next session. Tom Caldwell, we run out of time. It's been a pleasure to have you on the program. A lot of great insights there. Thanks for joining us.
Terrific. Thanks, Tony.
Well, as usual, Thomas Caldwell does not pull his punches. A lot to say about Canadian economic policy and the election. So you're going to hear a lot more talk about the election over the next few weeks on this program. Thanks for watching.